What's going on, guys? So you guys asked for it. I got the support that I wanted in order to bring you guys this. I just want to make sure you guys would be all right with me giving the explanation, because a lot of people think sometimes the explanation is boring, but in this case it's not. But I just want to make sure. So this is the explanation video on the place we went to, why it's so creepy, why we were so like off about it, why I keep repeatedly saying it has a weird vibe to it. So this is a story that we found, the only thing we found on this place, and it's a Reddit story, so it could be fake, it could be real. Now, why someone would make up a story like this, I don't know. Obviously people do things, but I thought I'd read it anyway because it made a lot of sense. But I'll leave it down in the description. You guys can, make your own decisions on whether you believe it or not. I'm kind of undecided still, but I thought it would still be cool to include in this. So I'm gonna go ahead and start the video off with this story and then explain a few more things that came afterwards. So here we go. So there's only one name in it, and it's Karen. There's no last name, and then there's two children's names, so we're gonna get into this. So I've only disclosed this story to 5 people I know. 2 are my closest friends and 2 are my parents, and the other is my therapist. She's never said came out with this until a year ago, apparently. In 1989, I received my PhD in psychology from BC, which is Boston College, with a minor in child psychology. After 2 years of intensive relationships, I found myself employed at the Gabler Children's Center. The Gabler Children's Center was a children's psychiatric hospital in Waltham, Massachusetts. The GCC, as I call it for short, was built in 1955 and demolished in 1992. Now, there is some argument that it was actually demolished in 2010, but this says 1992, so I'm not sure which is right. I personally believe it's 1992, and I'll let you guys know why at the end of this. It was meant for children with severe chronic mental illnesses, ages 16 and under, so these are pretty young kids. And the state health officials said that it was closed for lack of funds, but she believes it was for a different reason. On a particularly frigid November morning in 1991, I began working at the GCC. My job was no more than assistant to child psychologist, which she was the assistant to the chief psychologist, who basically was the head doctor. She just made sure all the kids were not doing anything that would get them hurt. I guess a lot of these kids were out of the ordinary, but... So the first week was fairly routine. I dealt with kids that had a wide range of mental disorders, from extremely debilitating autism to kids with horrible anger issues, schizophrenia, and more. Granted, some kids like Ivan Diaval were much more calm and even intelligent. Ivan was supposedly the son of 2 Russian immigrants with an undiagnosed form of antisocial personality disorder. So these are pretty serious illnesses, so these kids had it rough. They definitely did. So I'll continue here. A week into my job, I opened the door to Ivan's room, only to find a 5-year-old named Lucy lying on the floor, convulsing and foaming at the mouth. I disregarded Ivan and rushed to Lucy. I quickly brought her to the nurse, who dismissed it as an epileptic seizure. Lucy, however, claimed she visited a dark place. When she had her seizure, when I asked her about the dark place, she said she saw nothing but fire and darkness, darker than the night. For a 5-year-old, she was surprisingly articulate in her small description of the dark place. I'm not sure what the dark place is, to be honest with you. Timid and admittedly scared, I walked back to Ivan's room after calming Lucy. Ivan was not in his room, despite the fact that it was 11 a.m., the time when all kids are confined to their individual rooms. Now, I'm not sure if that was supposed to be 11 p.m. or not, but either way, he was supposed to be there, but he wasn't. She alerted the chief psychologist. She looked concerned and told me to check the baby monitor. Each room was equipped with a small baby monitor of sorts. The baby monitor never delivered any sound. It just showed the room black and white. So they basically monitored the kids like a security camera to make sure that they were in their rooms when they needed to be. We were able to replay any moment of the day, trawled through all the activities of the morning, only to find that Ivan had been in his room the entire morning. We didn't even see Lucy having a seizure in the room. The head psychologist, normally the sweetest woman, turned her head at me after seeing the footage. She gazed at me and didn't blink, not once. Her stare was something out of a horror film. She simply told me, "I think it's best we let this one go." So, sorry, that was a text. This is for a different video, but basically what she said there is that he was actually in his room, according to the camera, and there was no footage of that seizure happening, which is obviously odd. I don't know what to make of that. Obviously, a lot of people say, all right, this is fake. I'm going to continue. This story still creeps me out. So that afternoon, during a small lunch break for the stable kids, I confronted Ivan. He denied that he had any wrongdoing. Saying briefly he left the room to alert the chief psychologist about Lucy. When asked why Lucy was in the room, he shrugged his shoulders. That night I couldn't sleep. I lived a block away from the institute and decided to use my key to enter the building at 11 p.m. at night. It was the first day of December, and a light, blustery snow was falling softly from the sky. I entered the building quietly and entered the police office of the chief psychologist to fetch the baby monitor tapes. Now, just so you guys know, this baby monitor it's basically a security camera. It's not the baby monitor that is used for sound to know when your baby's awake or crying or anything like that. So I replayed the one I had watched earlier in the morning, only to find one more of the same. That is, until I paused the monitor at about halfway point, it was completely dark and completely blurred for a solid 15 seconds before resuming to a sleeping Ivan. Confused, I focused on the still frame across the small cross was on Ivan's wall. For a split second, frame of darkness, the cross was upside down. So at the blink of an eye, it went from standing right side up to right side down. And I will explain more of this stuff, why this is so creepy. Before resuming to its normal position, to this day, I've been told a gust of wind was probably the culprit. To this day, I deny that claim. Of course, people just chuck it up to whatever rational explanation there is all the time. I myself like to believe in conspiracies and, all this crazy stuff, just because it adds, more to the fun of it, and you never know if it's real or not. So, like I said, this is completely up to you guys. I'm just letting you guys know, giving you guys an explanation, because this story kind of ties in with what we found out and what we saw. So, the next morning, I showed up to work timid and restless. I was told by 2 co-workers that the chief psychologist had quit her job suddenly and chose me as a replacement. She left me a note on her desk. "Hi Karen, due to personal reasons and family issues, I must resign from this position. I entrust that you'll look after the children here." That note still is eerie to this day for me. There's something unnerving about it that makes the hair stand on my neck. That same day, I received word that Lucy's parents had pulled her out of the children's center. I wasn't notified until she had already left. That day at evening recess, every child stayed indoors because of the cold, despite the fact that dead autumn leaves still lay on the ground. So it was fall. It wasn't like it was winter. Temperature near 15 degrees Fahrenheit, so really, really cold, with winds. I looked out the window at light snow falling. It soothed me to see the rusty old swing sets and trees covered in the light layer of snow. I then looked back at some paperwork. 10 seconds later, I looked back at the snow-covered playground, and I rubbed my eyes in petrified disbelief to see Ivan sitting motionless on a swing set. He had the most unearthly smile on his face, grinning widely and maniacally. I had to stop myself from shrieking. So, basically, picture if you've seen The Grinch, when he gets the idea of what he's going to do to rob the presents from Whoville, that really weird smile, picture that, but on a kid. That's pretty much what she is describing. So if you picture that, it's creepy. That night I proceeded to leave work. I received a phone call on the building's main phone and picked it up, and it was Lucy's sobbing mother. She said that Lucy had died in the afternoon of none other than an epileptic seizure, which she said she accidentally suffocated on her food. So I don't know how suffocating and a seizure go together, but I'm not a doctor, so I could sound like a complete idiot saying that. So I hung up the phone and ran out of my office, only to see Ivan walking eerily through the hallways in the West Wing. Just picturing this and making this video in the dark is just fucking creeping me out. So I didn't sleep that night, nor did I hardly sleep for the remainder of the month. I quit my job at the GCC. The next day, my coworkers assured me that it was all a bizarre string of coincidences. But deep down, I know something was off with Ivan in the worst of ways. So that is the story right there. Now, the reason I find this so creepy is because of a few things. I will put them in the video. So on the screen is a few pictures. They'll be scrolling on your screen now. Are what were on the walls of the place before it was demolished. Now, these are very, very eerie and screwed up pictures, and they just all kind of tie together. If you guys remember the Snapchat ghost on the woman's body in a bikini at the water tower, it was crying. And if you see that picture, the one that says the addicted to the vaginal skin one, the eyes on that little girl are crying as well. If you look at the one in the rec center with the basketball hoop, there's a red upside down cross. And the other one doesn't tie too much in, but it's like a human form of Bert and Ernie from Sesame Street is what we came to the conclusion. And it all kind of just ties together with this story. So it's either someone read this story and painted those things years later before it got demolished, or someone saw the pictures and wrote this story around them. But either way, it's a huge coincidence that there is a story on this and there's actual pictures of stuff like that. There's a lot of pictures of this place I'll include in the video that are on your screen now. They're just really they're eerie. I don't know how to describe them, but they're kind of hard to look at sometimes. It's just, there was something weird about that place, for sure. And we left the place. So we left the place that night after part 2, which you guys haven't seen yet. But after we left, we found out all of this, and we also found out that big field that we were in and that pavement was a parking lot, and that field was where the actual hospital was. It's demolished, and there was also that little ghost, the black outline of the mad ghost. So that looked like the Snapchat. So there's one there, and there's one on the water tower. We think the water tower supplied water to that facility. We saw telephone poles. Maybe those supplied electricity because they don't connect to the streets. They just go into the woods, and we don't know where they end. But they definitely don't go to the streets because they go deep into the woods that we could just see trees for miles. So there's no way that they just stopped at one point in the woods. So we also, and then getting to the lady that we saw, we followed her during the day. She was walking, so we just left it alone. And then at night we went back. We saw a straight path. We took that path, and we took it for probably about 20-25 minutes. It just kept going and going and going. We looked it up on Google Earth. It was nothing but leading us more into the woods, and we just didn't want to go farther. And we turned back, and we continued on the path that we thought she took, and it just took us back to the water tower, which is obviously not where a house or car is. So we don't know till this day where she went. She could have easily turned back when we left, but she had no car, and where this place was, there was nowhere she could have came from unless she walked for miles. Like there's no houses nearby there. There's just a road, and unless she lived in maybe the gas station that was near there, I don't know. It was just really creepy, and the fact that it was a woman around the age that Karen would be in this story. She was a little older, and by the time maybe in this story she's probably about 25. We could even say she's 30. She'd be older, around in her 50s, close to 60s. Just throwing an age out there. That's pretty much what the woman looked like that we saw, and it was just really, really fucking creepy. And just a lot of this stuff just was creeping us out. If we had known this before we went there, it would have been a lot harder to walk on those paths, that's for sure. So I'm gonna leave it there. You guys can decide for yourselves with this stuff. I will leave the link to this story in the description down below, so go check it out if you want. Go do your own research, but I can tell you right now, you're not gonna find too much on this place, even on Wikipedia. So there's definitely something weird about this place. So thank you guys for watching the explanation. Go watch part 2. It'll be up tonight along with this. So enjoy, guys. Thank you for watching. And yeah, if you ever do anything that we're doing, going to abandoned places, never go alone. You never know what you'll find. So thank you guys for watching. Enjoy part 2. Peace.